Most movies get history completely wrong. They change events, mash characters together, and pretty much make stuff up. But these films went insane to get it right. Real soldiers consulting on the script, actual Nazi documents turned into dialogue. In one case, they even smuggled a movie out of the studio to stop the suits from wrecking it. These are the 15 most historically realistic movies ever made, praised for their accuracy by actual historians and military experts. This is the movie about the Watergate scandal, the famous one. Robert Redford and Dustin Hoffman play Bob Woodward and Carl Bernstein, the two Washington Post reporters who started digging into this little burglary at the Democratic headquarters. It seemed small at first, but these two guys just kept following the trail, and it led all the way to President Nixon's resignation. What makes this one stand out is how close they got it to reality. It's based directly on Woodward and Bernstein's own book, and those guys were right there on set, helping get everything perfect. Reporters and historians still say this is probably the most accurate movie ever made about journalism. The Committee to Protect Journalists even said they got pretty much everything spot on, right down to the typewriters, rotary phones, and all that newsroom chaos. They recreated the Post newsroom exactly. Trash, calendars, everything was just like the real place. Ben Bradlee, the famous editor played by Jason Robards, said watching this movie was like stepping right back into the real newsroom in the 70s. They got all the investigative details right too. The way Woodward and Bernstein dug through records, traced financial transactions, all the little tricks Bernstein used. Even Bradlee's famous line about the First Amendment and freedom of the press, that was actually pretty close to something he really said. And the actors were basically perfect matches. Jason Robards looked and sounded so much like Bradlee that the real Bradlee joked he wished he actually talked that cool in real life. Even minor characters felt real. This one's about a real World War II mission, the assassination of Reinhard Heydrich, one of the most brutal Nazi officers, also known as the Butcher of Prague. Though he had long remained hidden in Himmler's shadow, a former Gestapo official said that Himmler would just be a senseless dummy without the brutal, despotic, and merciless Heydrich. By June 1942, Heydrich was dead, assassinated at the hands of resistors sent by the Czech government in exile, as part of a mission called Operation Anthropoid. How that happened is the subject of this movie. Two Czech paratroopers, played by Cillian Murphy and Jamie Dornan, parachute back into occupied Czechoslovakia to pull off this mission. The assassination itself was messy, chaotic, not some slick action sequence, and that's exactly how it actually went down. The filmmakers really cared about getting this right. They even brought in a Czech military historian of Prague's Military History Institute as an advisor. He worked on the script and stayed on set the whole time. Everything from the exact location of the ambush in Prague to the uniforms, weapons, the church siege at the end, all real. The movie doesn't have time to cover every detail, obviously, but all the essential facts and the bravery of these guys is totally there. This one's about a true event from World War I. About 500 American soldiers led by Major Charles Whittlesey got completely cut off, trapped behind enemy lines in France's Argonne forest. They had no food, no supplies, nothing. But they held their ground through relentless German attacks until help finally came. Critics and historians love this one because it's really accurate. A lot of the dialogue comes straight from actual letters, diaries, and official military reports. The battle scenes feel authentic. World War I trench warfare, carrier pigeons, wave after wave of German attacks, all exactly how it went down historically. They even had military historians on set making sure every uniform, gun, muddy trench, all of it looked right. The Journal of American History specifically praised this movie for how straightforward and thoroughly researched it is. Other than one character, Rick Schroeder's aide character who combines several real people into one, pretty much everything you see on screen happened exactly like that. Easily one of the most accurate World War I movies ever made for television. Here we've got the true story of the raid at Cabanatuan, a daring rescue mission in the Philippines in 1945. U.S. Army Rangers, Alamo Scouts, and Filipino guerrillas teamed up to save over 500 American prisoners of war from a brutal Japanese prison camp. This one isn't flashy, but it absolutely nails the facts. The movie's based on detailed historical books like Ghost Soldiers and had direct input from real veterans. Captain Robert Prince, who actually planned the Rangers' assault, was on set as a consultant and said clearly this film got the operation exactly right. All the tactics, the fake frontal attack to distract the Japanese, the carefully coordinated strikes, even the ambush on a Japanese tank column led by Filipino guerrilla captain, it's all historically spot on. Historians say this is one of the most operationally accurate World War II movies you can watch. From the cruelty shown to the prisoners, to the careful tactical planning, it's all exactly how it happened, and shows why the Cabanatuan rescue is still considered one of the boldest operations in US military history. Directed by Ken Loach, this movie covers the Irish War of Independence and the Civil War right after. It follows two brothers, played by Cillian Murphy and Padraig Delaney, who join the IRA to fight against British occupation, but end up bitterly divided later on over a peace treaty with Britain. This one's extremely realistic. Almost every violent incident or atrocity shown has a real historical parallel. Historians say clearly the brutality by the British forces, burning farms, torturing prisoners, even executions by the IRA, are exactly like documented events from West Cork, around 1920s. When it came out, the realism actually caused a lot of controversy in Britain. People were shocked seeing their own forces portrayed that brutally. But historians backed up everything on screen, saying this movie was totally accurate. Loach worked closely with Irish historians and locals. The main characters are fictional, but everything else, the banned Gaelic sports, socialist ideas floating around at the time, and the guerrilla tactics, are exactly right. It won the Palme d'Or at Cannes and is considered one of the most historically accurate, brutally honest films ever made about Ireland's struggle for independence. This one's special. It's a joint American-Japanese film about Pearl Harbor, and it tells both sides of the story. You've got the Japanese side, with Admiral Yamamoto carefully planning the attack, the code-breaking drama behind the scenes, and then the American side, completely caught off guard when December 7th finally arrives. People love this film for one simple reason: accuracy. They brought in technical advisors who were actually there, both Japanese and American. They even got Japanese General Minoru Genda, one of the real masterminds behind Pearl Harbor, to help out behind the scenes. He wasn't officially credited, but he was there. Almost every important event, radar spotting planes, delayed warnings, how exactly those two waves of attacks unfolded, got recreated in amazing detail. Real figures like Yamamoto and General Walter Short are shown speaking lines straight from historical records. Apart from a few tiny goofs, ship details and small stuff, this movie remains, hands down, the most authentic Pearl Harbor dramatization ever filmed. This one's dark, intense, and incredibly detailed. It shows the infamous Wannsee Conference held in January 1942, where Nazi officials basically sat down around a table and planned out the final solution: the systematic extermination of Europe's Jews. Kenneth Branagh plays Reinhard Heydrich, Stanley Tucci plays Adolf Eichmann, and the whole movie basically unfolds in real time. The reason this film hits so hard is because they took the script almost word for word from the actual meeting transcripts recorded by Eichmann himself. The exact language, the exact bureaucratic way they discussed genocide, it's all chillingly accurate. The filmmakers got historians and Holocaust experts to review everything. They didn't add anything fictional beyond what's documented. Even the room, the seating arrangements, titles of all the officials present, they recreated everything exactly. Critics praised how it put you directly into that meeting, almost like you're watching a live event. This was a made-for-TV movie about one of the key turning points in the American Revolutionary War, General George Washington's famous Christmas night crossing of the Delaware River. Jeff Daniels plays Washington, leading his ragged army across the icy river to launch a surprise attack on Hessian forces in Trenton. The film's strong point is how well it captures the historical atmosphere. Sure, they softened the actual weather conditions. It was way worse in real life, and threw in a couple fictional dramatic moments, like Washington having a confrontation with General Gates. But overall, historians generally like this one. Costumes, dialogue, battle tactics, pretty much everything matches what you'd expect from 1776. A recent historical review gave it a 7 out of 10 on accuracy, noting that any inaccuracies don't really mess up the overall feeling of authenticity. It's based on historian Howard Fast's novel, so the background was solid from the start. This one's about the famous 1789 mutiny on the HMS Bounty. Anthony Hopkins plays the harsh Captain William Bligh. Mel Gibson is his second-in-command, Fletcher Christian. It covers the disastrous voyage to Tahiti, the crew's eventual rebellion, and Bligh's incredible survival journey over 3,600 miles in a tiny lifeboat. Compared to earlier Hollywood versions, this film really nailed the history. They used authentic ships, real naval practices from that period, even shot on actual locations. Details you'd normally never expect, like Fletcher Christian's tattoo mentioned in Bligh's real journals, they're included too. It's still got minor creative touches, obviously, but overall this is by far the most historically accurate telling of the Bounty story yet. And unlike previous adaptations, it gives us complex, realistic versions of Bligh and Christian, exactly as the historical records portray them. This one's about British politician William Wilberforce, who spent decades fighting against the slave trade. Set between the late 1780s and 1807, the film follows Wilberforce as he battles Parliament and public opinion to get the Slave Trade Act passed. He's helped along the way by allies like Prime Minister William Pitt and John Newton, a former slave trader. Historians actually love this one for its accuracy. Sure, they condensed a few debates, shortened timelines, and added a fictional romance for narrative purposes. But that's really minor stuff. The key historical events stay completely intact, and it even keeps smaller details historians appreciate, like Wilberforce's chronic illness and his opium use, or Pitt's heavy drinking habits. This version of the Alamo story was made specifically to correct a lot of the old myths and legends that piled up over the years. Dennis Quaid plays Sam Houston, Billy Bob Thornton is Davy Crockett, and the movie covers the full 13-day siege during the Texas Revolution, when a tiny group of Texian defenders faced General Santa Anna's entire army. What's really notable here is how historically serious this one is. For the first time, it actually showed Crockett's death based on real research. Instead of going down fighting like earlier movies showed, historians think he might have actually been executed after the battle. They got that from the memoirs of Lieutenant José Enrique de la Peña. Obviously, it caused a huge debate, but the filmmakers stuck to their guns, keeping it realistic instead of myth-making. Variety praised it for sticking close to facts, not legend. Everything from costumes and sets to the actual battle tactics. The night assault by Santa Anna's army, the final Texian stand, was carefully researched and checked by experts. So this isn't just another Hollywood retelling. It's probably the closest we've gotten to seeing what really happened at the Alamo on screen. This one's a great little-known movie about real-life explorers, Sir Richard Burton and John Speke, and their famous expedition to find the source of the Nile in the late 1850s. And this was no easy trip. They pushed through East Africa, faced rivalries, illnesses, battles, real nightmare conditions, and eventually discovered Lake Victoria, though it nearly cost them everything. Director Bob Rafelson went full authenticity here, even recreating an actual nighttime Somali attack exactly how it happened, straight out of Burton's and Speke's journals. They shot on location in Kenya and Uganda, got every detail right, props, costumes, even daily routines. Burton's gruesome injury, he literally got impaled through the jaw during a fight, is in there exactly as it happened, and Speke's surveying work is carefully accurate too. Experts at the time called Rafelson's style practically documentary-like, noting he was obsessive about historical accuracy down to the smallest details of Victorian life. So it's basically the closest you'll get to seeing an authentic 19th century expedition on film. Gettysburg started as a miniseries, but ended up becoming one of the most respected Civil War films ever. It covers the full battle, 3 brutal days that basically decided the war, and focuses heavily on key historical figures. Joshua Chamberlain and his famous bayonet charge, General Lee, General Longstreet, and Pickett's devastating final charge. Historians absolutely loved it. They called it one of the most accurate depictions of the battle ever filmed. Everything you see on screen, The speeches, the tactics, even tiny little moments, were pulled directly from soldiers' diaries and eyewitness accounts. The filmmakers had hundreds of Civil War reenactors involved, so it literally looks like old Brady photos brought to life. They hired a full-time historical expert named Brian Pohanka to check every single detail, from uniforms and weapons, right down to the actual battlefield moves. Sure, people quibbled about Martin Sheen playing Robert E. Lee. Sheen's physically smaller and a bit gentler, but that's a minor complaint. As far as capturing the reality and scale of the Battle of Gettysburg, this film nailed it. Everybody knows the movie Zulu, but this lesser-known prequel, Zulu Dawn, tells an equally dramatic story, the Battle of Isandlwana, where the Zulu army shocked the British with a massive defeat in 1879. It covers the lead-up, from Lord Chelmsford's badly planned invasion to the Zulu counterattack that annihilated the British 24th Regiment. And historians actually like this one a lot. Unlike many colonial-era films, it shows both sides honestly. It portrays how British authorities provoked the conflict, how Zulu King Cetshwayo actually wanted peace, and it gets all those big battle scenes right. They filmed in South Africa with thousands of local Zulu extras, making the tactics, the battle movements, even the desperate last stands very close to historical reality. They even brought in Zulu war scholars like Ian Knight to ensure accuracy. A special edition later included interviews with consultants who said they were specifically there to stop inaccuracies from getting filmed. It might not be as charismatic or popular as the 1964 original, but historians say it's actually more truthful. Definitely worth seeing for anyone serious about the era. This film puts you inside the Kennedy White House during the Cuban Missile Crisis. Kevin Costner plays Kenny O'Donnell, who's kind of a composite character, but besides that small tweak, everything else is meticulously accurate. The movie covers the full 13-day nuclear standoff, all the tense meetings, the naval blockade, and the eventual last-minute deal that averted disaster. Historian Philip Zelikow, who literally co-published transcripts of those meetings, said the dialogue in the film is often word for word from real recordings. People like Stevenson and General LeMay say exactly the kinds of things they actually said. The film does simplify a couple things and makes O'Donnell's role bigger than real life, but the crucial history, like the U-2 flights and naval confrontations, all checks out. The Los Angeles Times even defended the film, saying it accurately captured exactly how dangerous and stressful those 2 weeks really were. So yeah, Costner's character might be fictionalized a bit, but the history is solid, detailed, and truly captures what those intense 13 days felt like inside the White House.